Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming and joining us for this storytelling session. We've got some fantastic speakers for you. I've got Julie Swanston, who's the Executive Creative Director of Merlin Magic Making, and Nick Moran, Co-founder and Creative Director at Phantom Peak. So yeah, I suppose we'll start off with what's happening. So Julie, can you tell us about what kind of storytelling works in attractions for Merlin? I mean, what are you looking for, and have there been any lessons over the years?
I guess I would start by saying that storytelling is probably the most important thing in any attraction that we conceive and develop. So it's at the heart of, every roller coaster. It's at the heart of every figure that we put into Madame Tussauds. It's considered in the guest experience of the London Eye. It's something that we obsess about. I'm aware that not every guest that comes to a Merlin attraction necessarily engages in the detail of the story that we go to the lengths to tell, but nevertheless, we make sure that we have layers and layers of storytelling that sits across an entire attraction. And, one of the first things we'll do when we're conceiving an attraction is to think about what the touch points are. So if it's a roller coaster, for example, I use Wicker Man at Alton Towers. If anybody's been on that, hopefully some of our viewers will have been there. From the very beginning, the portal that you walk through, the queue line that you wait in, the music that you hear, the low-lying level smoke, all these sort of layers of richness all contribute and combine to help tell a story. The story for Wicker Man is very simple. It's you're being lured into something that feels really positive and celebratory, and then using the device of a pre-show, we are told by a fierce entity with a Scottish voice, Scottish accent, we're told by him that actually you've been lured in here to feed the Wicker Man, to feed the flames and keep his, his kind of badness alive. So every single bit of that roller coaster experience is imbued with the story. We even invented a sort of tribe of people who worshipped that god at Wicker Man. And before we opened the roller coaster, we went up to Alton Towers and we pulled up together all the operators that worked on that ride, and we did a full immersion session. If you're part of the Bjornen, which is what we call the tribe, if you're part of the Bjornen, this is how you look, this is how you walk, this is how you, when people look at you, this is how you look back at them. So a long answer to a short question, but I think suffice it to say that, without storytelling, we would just buy bits of metal and plonk them in the ground.
I suppose that lends itself very nicely onto you, Nick, with Phantom, because there's so many touch points and so many different ways that guests can interact with the many stories at Phantom Peak. What makes it unique? What's the sort of how do you bring storytelling into that?
Well, firstly, there are points at Phantom Peak which are a little bit like pieces of metal stuck in the ground, but every experience has to start somewhere. So, so for those who haven't been to Phantom Peak is sort of an open world experience, a little bit like a video game in real life. People come, they explore, they roam, they drink, they eat. Each session is about 4 hours, and people go on these things called trails, and trails are individual stories within the town that exist across a season of Phantom Peak. A season is 3 to 4 months, and there are 10 stories across that 3 to 4 months, and there's a content swap after that, and then there's a whole collection of new stories. So Phantom Peak is really powered by storytelling in that way, and that's what really brings people back over and over and over. Phantom Peak is about a 30% return rate, which is very high for the industry. And really the way that we think about kind of divide all those things about touch points is we say, what are the stories we want to tell? What are the mechanics that we can use in the world to create surprise and delight, and also to make sure people understand every single touch point? How can we use the things we have? We have a lot of technology, a lot of actors, a lot of performers, a lot of puzzles, a lot of video content, and how we divide those stories along those sequences and make sure that people understand and consume every single bit. So at the end, when they have that turn in, when the kind of experience and the story concludes of that individual trail, they have a satisfying ending which sort of proves the story of the trail. And that's really what we were trying to do at Phantom Peak, is have an experience that feels like you're the main character in a video game. And that's sort of how we think about it, how we divide those over those individual touch points.
I suppose actually I was wondering, Julie and Nick, how do you deal with guests that might not necessarily want that level of interaction? Because I went to a session from Sarah Thatcher at Disney recently, and she was talking about that these pieces of metal, these actors, these smoke machines, they're an invitation to play. They're not an obligation. And how do you kind of still give those guests an experience that they want to come back for, but they might not necessarily want to speak to everybody and touch everything and experience it in full? Julie, how do you do that at Merlin? I suppose you have so many different attractions, it varies.
It does, and you'll see kids running to the front of the queue line on Oblivion or Jumanji the ride at Chesney or whatever, and all they care about is the thrill of the ride. So what becomes really important then is the environment that they're in and delivering incredible guest experience, making sure that the world that the ride is in is beautifully themed. So not just the ride, but the land around them, that the operating staff are delivering excellence in terms of guest customer satisfaction. There's a whole host of elements that make sure that they have a brilliant time when they come to any of our attractions. But we're well aware. We don't talk about it so much now, but we used to talk sort of level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 1 is the kids that just want to go on a ride because it's the tallest, steepest, fastest, scariest ride. Or the people that want to go to Madame Tussauds because the latest pop star, we've just done Little Mix or whoever it is at Madame Tussauds. There will always be those that want more from that, and I guess as long as we are delivering for the people that want a real premium experience and that incredible sort of level of depth and thoughtfulness, then our thinking is then we'll scoop everybody up. So if we deliver to the max, hopefully make sure that everybody else is happy.
And Nick, I suppose that speaks to your 30% return rate, doesn't it? That actually there's so much that people want to do that they can't possibly do it all within one visit.
Yes, and to build on Sarah's point, obviously Sarah's not here, but Galactic Star Cruise is an incredible achievement, and well done to all the team who worked on it. But at Phantom Peak, 100% of close to 100% of people, I think it's 99% of people complete at least one story at Phantom Peak.
Oh wow!
So pretty much everyone engages, and that's because we have this app that acts as your sort of spine, your heads-up display, really in a video game that kind of guides you around the world, that makes it feel that that puts you in control, that makes it feel safe if you want to talk to actors because you always go and you're supposed to know what to do. It's kind of a safety blanket as well, because it kind of gives you that desire obstacle solution. You always know what is it you should be doing, what's in your way, and what you do when you achieve it. And the sort of the app that divides up the audience amongst the various different stories and guides you around is really the kind of the shield that those kind of nervous audience members have. At first you'll see them go to an actor and they'll say, "It says I should ask you about this," and the actors will be like, "It says? Hello, I'm here. I'm a person." And by the end of the story, when they've had, I think 4 to 5 actor interactions, they'll feel comfortable. They'll go and they'll read what they have to do, or they'll understand what they have to do. They'll put their phone away, and then they'll go and talk to the actor. So really, it's about having a mechanic that teaches people in that same way, and that's something that we've really, Phantom Peak's on its now 11th season or something, and it's something that I think that we've got better over the last 2.5 years. If we've got worse, I think that'd be extremely disappointing. But I'd like to think we're improving on that front. But that always is the goal.
Now? Which season are you in now?
Season 11. Season 11.
What is it? Is it kind of winter solstice?
So it's winter season just now. So we've had, we started off. So generally we have 4 seasons a year. A sort of a spring, summer, autumn, Halloweeny, and then a winter season. So that's our sort of cycle. And each new season is a complete new collection of stories. And the town has this time jump. So if you come back, you'll kind of see what's happened within the town and be able to understand the rhythms as it moves on and kind of grows and evolves. Or if you just want to come back and do all the stories, complete all the stories, you can do that, which some people do want to do.
I think I'm one of those people. I'd want to complete and tick off all of them.
You're a completionist.
Yeah, I like to make sure everything properly.
So far at Phantom Peak, I think there've been 116 trails over the course of the last since inception, and there are quite a few people who've completed them all.
you've got a real fan base, actually, haven't you, of Phantom? You've got Discord channels and groups of people that want to complete everything.
Yeah, it's we have a strong community, and it's all about, the goal of Phantom Peak was to try and make somewhere that people feel comfortable, that people feel happy to play and explore, that the world rewards engagement and sort of that sense of joy. And that's something that we really try to imbue on our audience. So people who kind of vibe with that, they find somewhere that they feel comfortable, they feel happy with. They understand that the more they give to the world, the more it gives back. So they want to come back over and over. And there is this kind of ongoing story, which they sort of want to get involved in, but also these quests that they can always come back and do something new. There's always something new to explore at Phantom Peak. That's the goal, certainly.
And it's wonderful, and we love it. So,
too kind. Too kind, so but also never stop.
No, okay. So I suppose moving on about kind of what you're both seeing in the industry in terms of storytelling. So, Julie, what are you seeing? I mean, especially Merlin Magic Making, you have so many attractions and so many different types of audience member and guests. What sorts of trends are you seeing in the space? Are you seeing any sorts of new things that guests are wanting? Is there anything new coming up?
Yeah, I think, we work really closely with brand and insights, and always sort of looking at our competitors and what consumer need they're answering. I think we continue to see people that want instant gratification. So we see a lot of pop-ups happening that are literally, I would argue that don't have a huge amount of storytelling, but they're fun, they're quick to engage with, they're Instagrammable, they're entertaining, and people leave. I think, I said before we started that I'd gone with a team to Phantom Peak, and it made my heart happy to see hordes of people, with their phones and with little pads and pens running around trying to, finish their trails and follow clues. And so I think, fragmentation is a thing that continues to that we continue to face. And I think where you've got groups of people like we were, a gaggle of people that work in the industry that were hugely enjoying Phantom Peak, you've also got a lot of young adults going to attractions, like I said, that are more that are without that depth of storytelling. I think the other thing that we're seeing lots of is use of tech. So the latest Punch Drunk, which is an incredible story told incredibly well by Helena Bonham Carter, and uses, I think, possibly one of the best examples of sound design that I've ever experienced. Very single-minded, very, in a world where we're told that one of the biggest trends is about having a sense of belonging and doing things together, we're literally told the sort of anathema of that at the beginning. Don't talk to anybody that you're with, don't talk to other people that you don't know, just have this singular experience. So, I think we're seeing lots from the actor-led experiences like Peaky Blinders, which again I thought was phenomenal. It was like BBC standard acting, to tech-led experiences like Viola's Room or ABBA. And we've also got, very simple pop-ups that provide instant gratification. So there's loads out there. I'd find it hard to sort of pin down, one sort of single trend that I think we're seeing. There's loads, and it's incumbent upon us, as creative leaders, to keep our eyes on what's happening and hopefully stay one step ahead.
What about you, Nick? What are you and the Phantom team seeing?
Well, I wouldn't dream to have the same market understanding as Julie, who is, in one of the top companies in the world, at the top of her game. But I would like to sort of, I think, build on what a lot of what Julie said, which is that I think you're seeing this market fragmentation of all different types of experiences come up. some short-term with those gratification things, some more long-form, which will reward more deep interactions and storytelling, some hybrids between the two. And I think this is all because of a market growth. I think there's a lot of growth there. There's a lot of people trying things. I think there's a lot more risk out there, a lot more appetite for risk, which I think is quite exciting. I think people are prepared to try and make more interesting types of storytelling and more interesting types of experiences. For example, to build on what Julie says about Viola's room, obviously it's incredible, but it's also a risk for Punch Drunk. You know, Punch Drunk have never done anything like it before, and that's really exciting that they feel the market can support them moving out of the masked promenade show, which they've been doing for 20 years now, something like that. So it's what's really great is you're seeing lots of people try things that are bold and ambitious, and you're seeing all these brands and all these IPs desperate to get a bit of that into the space, which is really exciting as well, because what brands are is they're a great sort of gateway entry for the average person. You know, hey, I may not consider doing a sort of time travel themed immersive experience, but I might do a Doctor Who one. Suddenly I've done one, I really enjoyed it, let me see what else there is in the market. So it's really great to see just a bit more appetite for risk, a bit more appetite for doing cool things in terms of storytelling, and an audience willing to consume them in lots of different ways.
I suppose as well, you've got a bit of audience loyalty as well. So as these experiences and these companies have a longer run, I suppose there's more chance that they can take a risk like Punch Drunk, because they've got a good record of doing good things, and even if it's different to what their audience were expecting, it's still, you almost have an audience that's more willing to come in and try it because they love Punch Drunk, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
They're trailblazers, aren't they? I think it's almost expected, and I think it's a beautiful experience. But I think even if it hadn't worked, like you say, because of their legacy, it's forgivable, right? And I think everybody, including us, we're all sort of pushing into new territories, new formats, trying out new things. I think the appetite for sort of testing and learning is only going to grow. The other thing I was just going to talk about is just the mashing up of things that is massively on the rise. Just things like Frameless working with Fern Cotton's Happy Place, and offering sound baths in the midst of what's his name? A Bosch or a Dali painting. It's like phenomenal creativity, phenomenal to think about how you take those two brands and smoosh them together. I think that, by the way, in terms of sort of future trends, that well-being plus entertainment plus a sense of immersion, maybe a sense of participation as well. I think that's probably something that's an area that we probably would be well served to keep our eye on.
And what about storytelling? So I know we've spoken about storytelling and the different actors and things you can use to bring people into that experience and connect with the visitors, but there's lots of immersive experiences within the attractions industry now, and we've spoken about a lot of them. How can you use storytelling to differentiate from others? There's lots of different things happening, even Julie, between your attractions. How do you use storytelling in each individual location?
Well, how do we use it to differentiate, I think, is really interesting. And if we think about, what we talked about, what we're seeing, some of the trends where storytelling isn't necessarily, front and center, I think what it allows us to do that differentiates us is leave guests with a sense of time well spent. It's like knowledge by stealth. People call it edutainment. I think that's probably, there's a bit too much education in that word for me, but there's something about it feeling like I didn't just go with a sort of popcorn brain and take a load of pictures and leave. There's something with substance about the thing that I've just done. So I think that's how we use storytelling to differentiate. How we use it in our different experiences is really interesting. I was talking to the team this morning, knowing that I was doing this session, and you know, something like a roller coaster is arguably quite easy, right? You've got a massive big hunk of metal. You've got people in a captive space where you go from the very beginning portal all the way through to the ride and you exit through the gift shop. So you've got your touch points and you know how to tell a story in a fairly comprehensive way. It becomes a little bit more difficult, staying with theme parks for a second, when you think about a land. Where it's not a linear experience. So think about Jumanji Land at Chessington. And that was challenging for two reasons. One, because everybody knows the story of Jumanji. The films have a beginning, middle, and an end. And people that are coming to our park arguably are well versed in that narrative. They know what it is. It's our job to then think about, actually, how do we take that narrative and deliver it in a non-linear way? And how do we know what the important parts are of that IP to dial up? How do we know how to really engage? So one of the things we worked really hard with the IP on was taking sort of some really pivotal scenes from the movie. And you'll remember, if you've seen it, the scene where the mandrill monkeys are on the rope bridges and they're throwing the gem around, and you know, our heroes trying to catch it. And so that's what led to Mandrill Mayhem, which is a flying coaster, winged coaster, where we literally have the mandrill in the middle of the ride, and his arms are basically provide the backrest for the seat. So he's literally scooped you up and taking you on this amazing sort of ride, not on a rope bridge, but it's, you know, it's an interpretation of that scene in the movie. So that's really interesting for us. I love working with IPs for that reason, because people have a preconceived idea of a narrative or what a brand stands for. And we work really, really closely and really well with IPs to bring the essence of everything they are to life in a different way, sometimes for a different audience.
Thank you, Julie. And Nick, how do you do it? Because of course you've been doing Phantom Peak for a few years now. I mean, how do you differentiate between the same seasons every year, and you know, how do you keep people having new experiences?
It's a complex question. I think it really is when you're building stories with an experience like Phantom Peak. It's what are the tools that you have, what are the constants, what are the variables, and how can you use what you have there in different ways. Much actually in the same way that Julie was saying with a roller coaster, you know your bits. You know, you have the queue, you have the big hunks of metal, you have the experience, and you have the gift shop. And in the same way, it's in Phantom Peak of we know what the components are that we have to play across the trail, and how do we use those in the best ways possible, and use the things that we know have to happen and the things that we can vary, you know, and make the best things possible. Have that kind of element of surprise and delight for the audience. And actually, it's the great thing about storytelling is no matter what you do within the live space, it's all the same discipline. It's what can we do with the tools we have to tell the best story that we can do. And I think, as Julie was saying, sometimes it's really hard. At Phantom Peak, we've kind of tried to build a system which is quite straightforward to tell stories in, but also still has its limitations and has its difficulties. But it really is about, you know, what are the tools that you can play with, and also how complex a story you can tell within that. How deep can you get? What time do you have? What attention do you have of people? You know, it's like I'm from an escape room background, and escape rooms are a notoriously poor storytelling mechanism, partly because you can't assume you have anyone's attention at the same time. You know, everyone's going to be looking at something completely different, so you can't really assume anything across the thing. So it's what do you do? What does the structure of the experience that you're building dictate the audience's feeling, and how can you ride those feelings with the constants and the variables that you can use across the attraction? And that's always the question. So it's sort of how long is a piece of string, but also what is the structural underpinnings of the things you're making.
And what sort of challenges do you have with that, Nick? Is there any big things that you're still struggling with? Is there anything that you think there's a great market for that you haven't seen yet? Is there
not really anything that really brings to mind. I'm not saying we've solved them all, but mostly we kind of we do the best with what we've done. And I think a lot of the things that we would like to do differently are things that are already made and are difficult to undo. And I think but sometimes it's quite good to have those challenges and those problems because it forces you to think outside the box and it forces you to kind of, do the best with what you've got. And I think some of the best decisions and the best things we've done across Phantom Peak's various different trails are because of the limitations that we have. So there's always the ideal, would I like for there to be more different tech units across town? Absolutely. Would I like there to be more locked off spaces that we can use for individual dioramas? Yes, absolutely. But I don't have those, so I've got to do things in the best way I can. So, for example, this season, do I want a quantum mailboy half phase through the ceiling of the saloon? Yes, he's going to be there because I don't have anywhere else to put him. But that's funny, and therefore, that's the thing. It forces you to think in different directions. So, I was going to have him somewhere else, but I've run out of space. So the sort of the limitations of what you do force you to be more creative. And of course, there's a limitation to that. And you can't always solve things by phasing quantum mailboys into the sides of saloons. I wish we could always do that in real life as well. But straightforward. But it also is about building a system that is flexible and plays to your strengths. Phantom Peak is a place with a strong sense of humor, that is playful, that is fun. And I think we wouldn't be able to do half the fun, playful things we would do if this was a dour, post-apocalyptic world full of sadness. So it is about what you can do with the dynamic range of the experience and how you can stretch and squish it and how you can learn and grow. It's a complex question to answer, and I don't think I've answered it very well.
Well, that was great. What about you, Julie? What sort of challenges do you guys have, and is there anything that you're looking for to solve them?
Oh my goodness, that's a macro question if ever I heard one. What sort of challenges? I think I talked about it earlier, really. I think it's, staying ahead of the game. I think it's finding new and nimble ways to for our business to show up in a world where, theme parks are now really and long-standing attractions are only one of a plethora of ways that people spend their time and spend their money. Everybody's looking for the latest, the newest, the most braggable experience to go to. When ABBA Voyage, first showed up, that's what everybody wanted to say they'd been to that. It's like, what's our next version of that? Not in terms of music, but just in terms of, using imaginative and innovative tech and ideation to create, world-class experiences. I think that's where we spend a lot of our time. We spend a lot of our time thinking, ideating, running things past our exec and hoping that we're not going to be laughed out of the boardroom.
I suppose as well, for every 5 ideas you have to fix something, only one of them actually becomes a boy halfway through a saloon.
Absolutely. That's the fun of it. Yeah. That's the fun of it. That's something that I talk to the team a lot about is, I use a stupid analogy probably about like a rugby pitch. And our job is to conceive an idea, let's call it the rugby ball. And once we've conceived it and we've told people about it internally and we've got initial buy-in, it's our job to hold that, protect it, and run from one end of the pitch to the other, even though we've got, the equivalent of fly halves, and I don't know enough about rugby to finish off the analogy, but, it could be health and safety, it could be
budgets, I suppose.
Budgets. It could, imagine trying to pitch. I know, let's make a wooden roller coaster in the middle of the woods in Alton Towers. We'll have a 17-meter high wooden effigy, and every time the train passes through its chest, it'll burst into flames. Right? So wow. That rugby ball was one that I carried dearly from beginning to end, and saw off quite a lot of fly halves or whatever the rugby players are that come after your ball. But that's the beauty of the job. I'm sure Nick would agree. It's finding virtue in the challenges that face us. That's the joy of the job.
I couldn't agree more. If it was all easy, it wouldn't be the same. And also, I don't think you'd make half as many good things. The challenges along the way force you to kind of duck and dive, and what comes out the other end sometimes is so much better than what was conceived because it's had to survive the rigors of the rugby pitch. Something that I don't understand because I haven't played rugby since I was at school, and even then I didn't understand the rules. I just realized that if you shout really loud and are really far away from the ball and are running really fast, then you don't have to do anything and you can get inside really quickly at the end. So in that metaphor, I would not be helping the rugby ball get anywhere over the idea line to be built.
I clearly know very little more about rugby than you, Nick, given that the only member of the team that I can remember is the fly half, and I'm sure that's not even the right guy. But anyway, or girl.
We've done our best. Thank you so much, Julie and Nick, for joining us and having this conversation. It's been really interesting and really appreciate your time. Thanks everybody for joining us, and stay tuned to see who the winners are of our storytelling categories, which will be announced next.
And now the winners of the 2024 blooloop Innovation Awards Storytelling Culture category. Third place, the Ingredients Experience at the Guinness Storehouse Dublin from Dalziel and Power Design Consultants. Second place, Hagia Sophia History and Experience Museum from DEM Museums. And first place, International African American Museum from Ralph Applebaum Associates. Congratulations to all of the winners. And now the winners of the 2024 blooloop Innovation Awards Storytelling category. Third place, Alton Towers Resort Nemesis Reborn from Merlin Entertainments. Second place, 360 An Extraordinary Experience from Princess Cruises. And first place, Bulanginia Dreaming Lunar Light Journey from Laser Vision. Congratulations to all of the winners.